penalties, and you were involved. How much is this going to hurt? How much does it hurt? Are you like
it does hurt.
Alan Brown and Matt Doherty? Do you go do you leave them alone? Do you console them? What's the vibe? What happens?
Listen, I think I don't think the players will be going up to them, cuddling them and stuff. They're
well,
grown
they can't
men.
anyway.
They'll know that. Yeah, well, exactly. But I know there'll be a case of like their teammates will be there for them. Of course they won't. They'll be hurting, but this you shouldn't miss penalties. But we know world-class players miss penalties. It's just the way it is. But it is something that will be with them. I mean, when you talk about that penalty shootout against Spain in the World Cup, I didn't take a penalty, and to this day I regret it not taking a penalty. I really do, because I'd rather take one and fail than not take one. Does that make sense? And I think the reason I didn't take one is because the quality of the penalty takers ahead of me was far superior to me. But I made a vow that day that if I'm ever in a penalty shootout again, I'm taking one, even though I don't naturally take them. And I did. I think I took a penalty then in the playoffs for Sunderland, semi-final of the playoffs. And my penalty was one where if I missed, we went out. But I made sure that I just felt I don't want that regret of not being there to take the penalty.
Dan, Johnny, good afternoon. What are your overriding emotions after all this?
Yeah, I think it is more frustration. I mean, I don't know. The mad thing is not the mad thing is it's like this major tournament opportunity at home soil, as Gary says, it's incredible. I'm not entirely sure it's going to happen really. The competition in its current form, and certainly, inquiries and discussions I had, even in the last 24 hours. I think UEFA and international football, they're conscious there's a bit of an issue here, and I don't know. That's a weird constellation because it doesn't really change it for players. I mean, players are still, they're 28 now, they're 30, and in 2 years' time or whatever. There's some guys who may not necessarily even be there at the business end of the World Cup campaign, although we don't have an especially old team at the moment right now. But I mean, I don't know, that's no consolation to anyone now, but I'm not so sure that tournament next summer will proceed in the way that we think it might. But Stefan, leaving that to one side, I think I made the point last month, it would be ridiculous to overreact to that. And I think on the same sense as well, it's also ridiculous to overreact after the other day and say, well, this is it. We've nailed it now because the performance was better. I think it's still, let's see. But I think there was certainly a signs in the right direction. I'd be interested to hear Gary's views about maybe some of the issues that were there last month. Defensively, does he feel that they were addressed? They obviously put in a second midfielder basically next to James McCarthy. Yeah. I also thought even how did the back four unit, I thought the partnership between Duffy and Egan, I thought was very good, just in terms of Egan is a bit more recovery and Duffy is the more aggressive one. And I liked the setup and the structure generally, albeit there was those issues on the counter attack, from the corners and stuff, which we'll still look at. Yeah. But I just thought there was just a degree of control in how they played and a pattern in how they played that was really encouraging. But at the same time, across this entire Euro 2020 campaign, you can even go back to the Nations League where it started. But I mean, I even made the point last month. I mean, if you take the games against Switzerland and Denmark and now Slovakia, Ireland haven't scored the first goal in any of those games. They should have scored that first goal the other night, but there certainly isn't that clinical streak. I think the overall performance was good, but at the same time, there still is question marks about where these goals are going to come from. But I don't know. I thought it was better overall, yes. And I think it's a weird one, John. I made this point in the piece about the Wales game today, which is a bit of a strange one, really, because all of the great disappointments of Irish football history and recent memories, you have months to stew on it. France, you had 10 months till the next competitive game. The Denmark 5-1, I mean, it was the end of the road, but yet there was a big, long, interminable wait. Now they have a game 3 days later. They're waiting for COVID test results today and stuff, and they're hoping that's going to go okay. But it's a weird one. I'd say it's a weird attitude in the camp because you can't be through something that emotional and then, maybe it's great to have a game and a focus, but I'd be a bit apprehensive about this Wales game in some ways, coming off the back of something as draining, I'm sure, as that.
Johnny, 22 goals in 27 competitive matches since Robbie Keane retired. Dave McGoldrick was brilliant the other night, but it is frustrating that Aaron Connolly wasn't playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the lads probably didn't reference that yet as well, which was the massive elephant in the room in terms of the game. That, you know, it was so bizarre watching Stephen Kenny's interview beforehand. And initially, I was wondering, you know, have Aaron Connolly and Ida had some sort of a bust up here, because I hadn't heard the rumours about what actually transpired. And, you know, to be fair, a manager who's having his first really proper game in the circumstances that are already unusual, to have that thrown at you, and Ida as an option off the bench as well. Connolly probably would have started, obviously. To have that thrown at you, really, really unfortunate in the circumstances, because it would have upset their plans. And now, to be fair, I think James McLean coming into that position was a plus in many respects. We saw that in the second minute, he made an unbelievable defensive intervention. And Connolly wouldn't have done that, because it wouldn't be in his kind of, not his mentality, it wouldn't be his makeup to make that run. And it was an incredibly important intervention. And it does annoy me at times that James McLean is kind of, sometimes the criticism he gets, because I'll never knock him on the pitch, because I think his honesty is just incredible, and his attitude, and he gives you everything that he can give you. And the flaky stuff, he'll never be like that, and you can just rely on him. The game itself, I was really, really encouraged. I have to say, I was enjoying an Ireland game for the first time probably in a while. If Mick McCarthy had been over that team, there's nothing to say we wouldn't have gotten the same result or gotten the penalties. And Mick was working in a different remit. He had a very short time span with one remit of getting them to the Euros, and losing out on penalties. You can't get too hung up about penalties, because it's Northern Ireland went through, we didn't, and it's not far off 50-50. It is a bit of a toss of a coin. We didn't go through, but let's move on. And to be fair, if we had the Euros, as we should have had the Euros in 2020 upcoming in next year, and the thought of Dublin, what it would be like with Ireland not there, that would be a lot more disappointing. But as Dan said, that doubt that reigns in terms of the Euros, to me, definitely cushions the blow. And I saw an awful lot in that game that made me encouraged. Conor Hourihane looked like he wanted to pass the football like I'd never seen him before. He gave the ball away, but he did some unbelievable things in the game as well. He obviously should have scored, but I would not be worried. I genuinely wouldn't be that worried that we didn't score, because I think we created chances, and I'm a firm believer in the fact that if you create chances, you will score them. We don't create enough chances at this Irish team. We did create chances. We hit the post. We missed an absolute sitter. Brown's chance was a very good chance as well. McLean's chance in the first half, which he shanked, was a very good chance. And generally, these were good chances that we created. And I think there was a difference in the philosophy. And I think, as much as there was a massive disappointment across the nation, I think the nation needed a lift. I would be very much of the opinion that we lost the battle, but we'll win the war.
We're getting some comment on 53106 and off the ball on Twitter already, as you would expect with the biggest story in the country, which is always the Republic of Ireland soccer team, as it should be. OTB really going to have egg in their face. Kenny should never have got the job. He'll be gone after the World Cup qualifying campaign. Lads, this is the most optimistic I've ever been after a playoff defeat. The football Thursday night compared to the last three regimes was so refreshing. It puts the notion that we don't have the players thing to bed. We don't have the players to win the World Cup, but we can play with a style and a plan to be competitive at the business end of a group. Some good players coming through. Collins at Stoke, for example, has got a chance. That's Nathan Collins. Jack Byrne, too good for the League of Ireland. Will go back to the UK. That is from Hopeful in Cork. And at the other end of the world, lad, Stephen Kenny is so obviously out of his depth. Slovakia were poor and there for the taking, but his tactical naivety was plain to see. The defence sat deep throughout the second half. David McGoldrick spent as much time on the halfway line as he did in the opposition box. At no time did Kenny get him to stay on the shoulder of the Slovakian central defenders and get runners off him. All this talk of green shoots is only true if you have a greenhouse. That is from Derek.
Listen, John, I mean, there's some mad stuff there. There is a sense that I do think anyone who's formed an opinion now, someone who can say something as definitively as someone is out of their depth, they've had that opinion before the campaign has started, and that's it. And they have their view. And I actually think comment and feedback is great. It's integral to shows. It's integral to social media and stuff. But there's definitely this process of people sort of forming camps. you know, at the start of a management, and that can go both ways, you know. Like, so, you know, like people at the start, you know, of I think after Mick McCarthy's first game in Gibraltar, there was like definitive views as well, and it's just like, it's that's a predetermined opinion for me, you know. I don't think anyone can, and to be fair, I don't think, like, I've listened to a lot of stuff since Thursday, you know, very interested. I'm always interested to hear the views of all the ex-players and what they're saying. And I really haven't heard sort of one sort of credible view out, you know, taking that sort of extreme point of view. And as I've said, it was ridiculous to take an extreme view negative after the first two games. I think it's like you have to rein in any optimism as well, because as Gary like alluded to, we still don't know where Slovakia really are at, and they were a weakened side. But I think what we want to see is a side that looks like it's taking information on board, it's acting on it, it's playing with a purpose. Like, you know, David McGoldrick's style of play as a forward player is to come and take those. But David McGoldrick is not really a shoulder of the last man type of striker. No. And actually, what David McGoldrick, you could see very clearly in the second half, like the position, like that move that Conor Hourihane unfortunately will haunt him to miss. It was actually the perfect move. It was exactly what you wanted. It was Shane Duffy stepping out and picking the pass. It was McGoldrick and you could even see, I would assume they've worked on like triggering runs off McGoldrick when he'd take the ball. There was one previously where Enda Stevens even made a run, and you could see that it was coordinated, and McGoldrick was part of a pattern. And I just don't think people are sending those messages of Conor Hourihane sticks that ball away. It's pure. Look, everyone is completely entitled to their opinion. The great thing about the national team is that everyone has one, and we should always sort of welcome that. But I think anyone, I don't know. I think they're trying to get a rise out of people by having that definitive view. But like it's early days. Of course, it's early days, and we need to see, you know, more of that. You know, like there's no doubt that game on Thursday, like all the players knew that this was a winner takes all tie, and Ireland teams have a record of actually performing in those type of games and you know, at times even rising above their levels in previous games. But I'm sort of quite encouraged that we're going to see more of that in the forthcoming games, and that, you know, people can just most people I've spoken to be honest, since Thursday have been pretty positive, but like the handful of negative comments are getting a fair bit of volume, and I'm not really sure that's reflective of the general reaction at all.
Gary, Alan Brown was great when he came on. Jack Byrne can offer a creative spark. You know, Matt Doherty, you know, when Coleman comes back, what's going to happen there? Who impressed you, and who do we need, you know, maybe on the fringes and the younger players to come through into the Kenny project to make it better?
Well, I want all those young players who are in and around it or not quite made it to have the mentality now that when you don't qualify for a tournament, that's got to be your mindset, that you're going to force your way in by producing at club level. But in terms of who impressed me on the night, I thought McGoldrick was excellent. I agree totally with Dan. I think his assets are dropping into that 10 area, and he creates so many problems. And to a certain extent now that there's a lot of people talking about, well, why don't we play him in 10 or certainly that advanced midfielder? It's not as simple as that, and it won't work like that. Because if you think about McGoldrick as a centre forward, as he drops and goes into that 10 area, he creates a problem for me at centre half, and he creates a problem for that holding midfielder who's always having to look over his shoulder to see where he is. Now, if he starts in that 10 area, he's going to be so easier to mark. He will be. I've no doubt he won't cause any of the type of problems that he does now. And also, I think we've been a bit dismissive of the amount of work that the advanced midfielder gets through defensively, like Jeff Hendrick, in terms of dropping back, thickening up that midfield. So that's certainly something you don't want to see McGoldrick doing, having to put a defensive shift in that way. But I do like the look of him at centre forward, in that he will drop. But I do then think that the emphasis then on those wide strikers, that they, in my mind, they have to be centre forwards. They have to be those guys who instinctively, as soon as he drops deep, attack those spaces. And I think also with the likes of Brown, and certainly with Hendrick as well, when he does drop deep, there's your trigger then for those midfielders, that advanced midfielder, to run ahead of the ball, to get players in and around the box, because he has the ability then, McGoldrick, to turn and make passes. And because he is so good at receiving the ball in those areas, and he's got that physical presence to hold on to it, it then allows the likes of Doherty at right back, Stevens at left back, to get in advanced areas as well. And if you think about that performance against Slovakia. When Doherty and Stevens get in those advanced areas, they are so dangerous. And I agree totally with Dan. If you were to do a coaching session tomorrow and put on a video to say, this is how we want to play through the thirds, you would show that Connor chance. Duffy stepping into midfield, making passes, people saying he can't look after the ball. He can. You get McGoldrick then on the half turn, shows a bit of skill, strength, drives to the penalty box. And you've got Robinson and Brown then, who show the type of composure you don't normally see in the penalty box, because usually when you get the ball in those scenarios, and certainly with our team, people panic, their eyes light up thinking it's a goal. But they show such composure to make one pass, two passes to create the chance for Connor. And of course, listen, a player of his quality, he's got to finish that. But certainly I looked at it and I thought I could recognise, and as Dan just said there, passing patterns of play. I could recognise that players had an understanding of the framework with which they've been coached, that they knew their roles, that they knew their teammates' roles. And that is encouraging going forward, it is. And if you're thinking about how do we go forward from here, I would say the environment looks right. There's a camaraderie between the players and the coaching staff that we were led to believe was missing under O'Neill and Trapattoni. And I think there's a framework now to go on and do something. But of course, the big issue is going to be the goals, because they've been too far and few in terms of how many we get. We're not getting enough goals. It's not good enough. If you think that in the 3 games in this, we've only scored from a set piece, and certainly it's a problem that's plagued us ever since Robbie did retire.
I just going to cut in there quickly. I know we might be coming towards an ad, John, but it's interesting you mentioned Alan Brown. I don't know if it means anything. He's up doing the press conference today, so I assume that means he's got a very good chance of being involved tomorrow. Yeah. And I'm conscious the game was maybe a bit more stretched when he came on, but I've heard various discussions during the week about maybe that number 10 position or that more advanced position. Like Alan Brown has actually played a lot of his best football for Preston there. Now Preston are probably under Alex Neil viewed as a slightly more direct team. And I suppose we talk, and it's like Gary talks about the amount of actual work that the number 10 has to do, and how that position, maybe you picture a number 10 and it is like the playmaker who doesn't do as much of that.
No, not nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And in a strange way, I sort of wonder, would they have stumbled on something a bit there? Well, not stumbled on it, but obviously, McCarthy went off injured, so I'm not sure if it was a planned change. But that Brown, he covers a lot of ground, a lot of energy. Yeah. And if you have quite a technical number 9 dropping in, yeah, he's probably not as technical, Brown, maybe, but he gets into positions, and the amount of positions he got into, as I said, I'm conscious the game was a bit more stretched. But I just wonder, is that something that we're going to see maybe a bit of now, if they do go with that 2 a bit more withdrawn, that Brown maybe has given himself a bit of a chance of a bit of a run on the side there. It may not be true, but it's definitely... No,
but Dan, even in terms of Brown, I think because he plays for Preston, but Mick McCarthy talks so glowingly about him, and he's convinced he's a Premier League player. He's absolutely convinced he is a Premier League player who can impact at that level. And I think, as much as the game does get stretched, but he unsettled the Slovakians so much with that type of runs that he was getting in the box, and I thought he had a brilliant impact on it. I really did.
Okay, we've got to take a break, as Dan was saying there. Tyrrell Hatton, 14 under par. Shane Lowry, 12 under par. They're the 2 at the top at the BMW PGA Championship. Third round, Off the Ball Saturday, 53106. Plenty of texts coming in on the Republic of Ireland. Let's hear more from them back after this.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie. Looking out for one another is now more important than ever.
Especially our older and vulnerable friends or family.
So next week on News Talk, we've joined forces with Alone, supported by Guinness, to celebrate and connect older people in our community.
We'll be learning about all the ways we can help older people live happily, finding out what supports are available,
and looking at how we can all get involved by volunteering or donating to help support older people right across Ireland.
Follow the campaign all next week on News Talk, Together with Alone, supported by Guinness. Drink sensibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.
You hold a crisp green apple in your palm. You take a bite, and the first fresh crunch bursts into sweetness. The flavour lingers, and the sensation is delicious. We've brought colour to this feeling with Kerry Pippin, one of 28 new contemporary colours inspired by Ireland. Visit colourtrend.ie to find and support your local stockist. Colour Trend. an Irish company proudly crafting paint since 1953.
QuoteDevil.ie can save you money on your car insurance, van insurance or home insurance. Quote Devil Home Insurance is so easy. Get a quote in just 60 seconds and purchase cover in 3 minutes.
The Quote Devil's always got one hell of a quote.
Quote Devil Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Life admin. Yep. It even sounds boring. No wonder it goes on the long finger. But when you do get round to it, a good place to start is by reviewing your mortgage. You really never know if there's a better option unless you look into it. That's where the Ulster Bank mortgage team could help. Wherever you bank, get in touch and find out about switching your mortgage to us. Just search Ulster Bank Switch. Ulster Bank. Help for what matters. Over 18s only. Ulster Bank Ireland DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
I'll send an SOS to the world.
Our world cannot wait another minute. And while everyone has a part to play in the fight against climate change, we at EirGrid are stepping up too, safely making the national grid more resilient so that by 2030, 70% of Ireland's electricity can come from renewable sources. You can see how, with your support, we're stepping up to deliver a cleaner energy future at airgrid.ie.
If you're selling or distributing UK products in Ireland, then with Brexit approaching, it's time to get ready for a whole new ballgame.
That's right. From January 1st, 2021, the rules of the game will change for sellers and distributors of UK products in Ireland.
Get ready for the change today. Visit ccpc.ie/Brexit. From the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. Getting Ireland Brexit ready. A Government of Ireland initiative.
This is Gomo. Mobile with more for less. This is $12.99 a month for life. This is Gomo, Ireland's newest mobile network. With Gomo, you get all calls, all text, all data, all for only $12.99 a month for life. Switching is easy. Visit gomo.ie, sign up, and you're good to Gomo. So what are you waiting for? It's time for you to Gomo. Unlimited allowance subject to fair use. 30-day contract applies. A one-stop SIM activation fee of $12.99 applies. For full details, terms, roaming, and fair use, see gomo.ie.
At Audi, we know different people have different milestones. Whether it's your firstborn, saying I do, celebrating a birthday,
Happy birthday!
or even buying your first Audi. Make this milestone one to remember. Enjoy a range of finance offers from the 16th to the 25th of October with the Audi Milestones 2021 sales event.
Is there a difference between new Bachelor spaghetti hoops and spaghetti shorts? We asked the experts.
They taste different. No, the exact same. Those ones are kind of like a little lot hoops, but they're like snakes and caterpillars. Hoops are hoopier. I'm learning how to shape circles, and those are a lot of circles.
New Bachelor spaghetti hoops and spaghetti shorts. In store now.
The shape is the only difference.
The GAA Championships are back on Sky Sports. Enjoy all the action.
Close controls. Wonderful hands.
Feel all the drama.
A moment of magic.
Watch it all live.
So strong. What a finish!
Be inside the game with all live GAA games on Sky Sports Mix for all Sky customers at no extra cost.
That's unbelievable!
Sky Sports. Feel it all.
Harvey Norman, celebrating 17 years in Ireland with our best prices across our biggest range. Shop in our spacious stores or online for big deals like the Samsung 55-inch 4K Smart TV, now only $649, saving a massive €120. Or kickstart your day with your favourite coffee from Sage the Bambino Plus Espresso coffee machine, only $299. And we're matching all competitors' prices, even their sale prices. Harvey Norman, your appliances, technology, furniture and bedding specialists.
Go!
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Minimal contact in stadiums shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
You're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 o'clock. Speaking about the Republic of Ireland and other football matters with Dan McDonnell from the Irish Independent, the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward, and the former Republic of Ireland defender and World Cup player Gary Breen. 53106 is the number for your text messages. Here are some of them, plenty of them on the Irish team. Lads, McGoldrick was our best player on Thursday night, but do we start him at 9, dropping into 10, or start him at 10 with a 9 ahead of him? That is from Dinny. Good performance by the team. However, where can we get the goals? From Niall in Lucan. David on Twitter, Stephen Kenny starting to get things going. For the first time in a long time, we saw Ireland go for it when we weren't losing. I would rather us lose trying to win than just try not to lose. We played well and lost. It's better than not playing poorly and losing anyway. We get better playing the system. I think we got a strong group of players and some young players who hopefully will be strong in the future. That is from Ed. We cleared one off the line and also relied on Randolph to make an excellent save. They were a poor team. Go easy on the plaudits. Saying that, it's an improvement. However, no one really expected us to prevail in the shootout. Well, games at this level are won in the mind. That is from Zippy on Twitter. Dan, you've written about this in the paper today. Don't want to dwell on it too long, but just explain exactly, because there's a lot of conjecture around this and a lot of misinformation as well. What happened with this COVID issue with Aaron Connolly and Adam Ida, and are there any learnings from it?
I think there'll be learnings from it, definitely. Although like everything with COVID, is sort of, you have to underline the fact that there is an element of sort of unpredictability about the virus, in the sense that like we're seeing some of the biggest and best clubs and players in the world who I assume, have the best layers of sort of, protection and sort of, they've been pretty well sort of costed and stuff, and they still can't avoid it. So I am sort of conscious of that. You are right, there's been a lot of conjecture and sort of some absolutely mad stuff going around during the game that was created probably. One important point, even that before the game when Aaron Connolly and Adam Ida were pulled out of the match, like there was a vacuum there for a reason, in a couple of ways. Brighton and Norwich, for some reason, didn't want Connolly and Ida mentioned in the FAI statement that without announcing the second positive case. So that obviously created a problem because it was an unexplained absence. Then because the sort of the FAI communications had been sort of caught up in and around this outbreak, they basically, long story short, they had no presence in the ground on the night at all. So that Stephen Kenny interview on Sky that people saw, which looked like it was sort of conducted, sort of with a robot from the 80s or something. From the future. But yeah, it was sort of bizarre. But that was, there was actually no press officer on hand in the stadium to even manage and arrange that. That had to be done through stadium staff because people were working remotely. None of us journalists were over there either. So that left a vacuum that allowed people to just make up rubbish. But it comes back to the start of the week when the entire Irish camp is meant to operate, and basically people are probably familiar with this, but it's a bubble. They operate in this bubble for the entire week. Family and friends would normally come and maybe see them in the hotel and stuff. That type of thing's off the agenda. They have to stay together. They leave the hotel to train, to go to matches, and that's it. And it's the same rules when they left the country on the plane. Over in Slovakia and stuff. There's no walking around for a coffee or any of that. It's all very tight. The problem they had is that the FAI had a round of tests on Monday, and they turned out they had one positive case from within their backroom staff. Now, at that stage, they checked who that backroom staff member had been around, and that was two other members of the backroom staff. So all three of those people were pulled out of the trip to Slovakia, which is fair enough. Now, at that point, maybe this is where some of the learnings maybe come in, as you say. The decision was made to bring in two replacement backroom staff members who went to Slovakia. Now, in one case, there was an individual who had been with the 21s group, had been tested with the 21s group, and they were clear. They were clear. They had a negative test on Saturday. They had a negative test on Tuesday morning before the team flew to Slovakia. The feeling was, okay, this person has not been within the senior team bubble, but they have clean tests, so they are good to go. So they get to Slovakia then. In order to go into the stadium with the UEFA protocols, you needed a UEFA test, like under sort of UEFA auspices of a clean test no more than 3 days old. So the rest of the Irish group had done their tests on Monday, but when they got to Slovakia, 3 people needed to be tested. One was Josh Cullen, who was a late call into the squad who hadn't been there, and the other 2 were the new backroom staff members who were called in to replace the ones who dropped out. Unfortunately, one of those people tested positive. And as a result, they had to retrace the steps of where they were on the plane. And it's transpired that there was 2 staff members in front of them and 2 players behind them. 2 of those players, as we know, were Connolly and Ida. And as a consequence, they weren't able to play in the game. Now, I've got a lot of comments about this. People saying, well, you know, the HSE guidelines on this were, you know, they're ridiculous. Why didn't they play them? The UK rules are different and stuff. That's unfortunately just not. I know Stephen Kenny spoke about how the Irish rules are more stringent than the UK, and that is a fact. But the fact is that the only way Ireland are able to play these games, to come in from England without having to do the players are able to come in from England without doing the 14 days and all of that, to go to Slovakia and come back when they're not a green list country and all, is that you abide by HSE rules for the entire time of the gathering. So, like, the HSE rules are the rules. They are the reason we have international sport at the moment. So any suggestion that they sort of could have gone rogue as such, I mean, that is fraught with danger, because let's remember, the players haven't been tested since Monday. The players were tested again yesterday, and we're still waiting for those results. And there's an element of anxiety about, oh dear, was this going around? We hope not. We pray not. But if it transpires that there was more, and then it transpires that they actually overrode the HSE guidelines in terms of how they picked the match and stuff, pick players for the match, I mean, that would have been just absolute carnage. They just could not have done that. It is unbelievably frustrating. It is beyond frustrating. People have asked questions about could they have seated further apart in the flight? Why were the players not in one section to the staff? I think there are. That's possibly part of introspection and reflecting.
And hindsight, yeah.
But the whole point of the bubble is that everyone is within the bubble. Like, you know, the backroom staff are in the bubble. The player might need to go to the physio for an hour's treatment. You know, everyone is meant to be within the bubble. But in hindsight, I think probably taking people in and out of the bubble. Like, I think UEFA have had a lot of cases, and I think they're looking at associations and saying, did you manage your bubble tightly enough? And I think that is certainly open for debate as much as is possible within the you know, like, you can't get into the angle of like victim blaming and sort of like, we don't know where people have contracted the virus. The one thing I did mention it in my piece today, and it may or may not be significant, but obviously, you know, they have to do an element of tracing. And the only time the 2 positive cases were in a room together, I believe, was Monday, which was an event around a kit launch. And they're in the same room and stuff. And they weren't deemed as close contacts under the HSE guidelines. But that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't going around. Let's hope it wasn't. But that's why there's a degree of people waiting to see how these tests went today. And yes, they were tested yesterday. The results, I think, are due later today, and hoping that no one has been affected additionally here. I think there's learnings. There is no doubt there's learnings. But, like, you know, they have to follow the HSE rules. I think people have to accept that, and you can't blame the HSE. That's nonsense. But they will, I suspect, be reviewing every part of maybe the operations across the week. I know, you know, Stephen Kenny was not happy. And I think, you know, there will be an internal discussion about what could have been done better. But I think it's important to get some of the facts out there to maybe explain why certain things happened in the way that they did.
Yeah, and maybe on the basis the fact that the player, I'll just correct that the staff member had a negative test on a Saturday and a Tuesday. Maybe they felt that was okay on that basis. They did, and it's just. But I think the point that they'd been outside with another group and come into the bubble, that's the decision-making process that they will probably regret, even if there was misfortune about how it all came to pass. Yeah. It's like you know, it's like it's a strange analogy, but like you're giving a referee a decision to make. Like you've taken a slight, you know, it's a decision you've made to take someone from one camp to the other, and of course you don't expect anything bad to happen with that when they've got clean tests. But when something does happen, you have to reflect on that. Yeah, an invisible, highly contagious virus. 53106, all those writing Kenny off after 3 games must work for Nevitt, given they reckon you can jump from level 2 to level 5 overnight, from Dinny on Twitter. Well, Nevitt got a hard job. Hi lads, we're starting to learn a new way to play with the passion we have, so let's give the lads and management a chance. Change is hard, we will get there. John, come on, all Ireland. Maybe referring to Northern Ireland. While it was an encouraging performance, it was no cigar. Martin O'Neill won 3 massive games against superior opposition when they had to be won. Germany at home, Italy in the Euros, Wales away. So what do we want? Winners or a nice team to watch a work in progress? Until Stephen wins a really big game that counts, the question mark will always hang over him. That is from Eamon in Dublin. Yeah, Johnny, like Ian Barclough, Sligo Rovers, he's the man now with the 90-minute game to get into the Euros.
Yeah, it's remarkable, really. You know, he was at Sligo at an interesting time in the League of Ireland, a fairly abridged season, very different to, you know, some of the managers, very different to Paul Cook, who would have been such a cult hero. Barclough, really steady hand, encouraged them to play nice football, and you know, fair play to Northern Ireland. We can reflect in the south here about, you know, the fact that we're a fairly small nation, and, you know, we may qualify for the Euros much of the time, but we don't really achieve much. But what the Northern Ireland have done under Mick O'Neill, and now have given themselves a massive chance. You'd have to say as well, Slovakia, as much as they'll probably have those players back, didn't exactly fill one with huge confidence. I think if you can kind of maybe sit back a bit and allow Hamsik to kind of pull the strings, but not necessarily in a situation that puts you in trouble. The North will go in there in such a high, and Barclough, I think, would have had a very good kind of reputation when he was in the League of Ireland, well liked by people, and it's a good thing as well. I think, you know, when you look at what Stephen Kenny, Mick O'Neill, and Ian Barclough have gone on to do, all coming from the League of Ireland. You know, we didn't have. It's not quite like the players. Not that many managers have gone through the League of Ireland and gone on to great things, really. Managers have gone over. Even Stephen Kenny's time in Britain was a mixed success. You know, we'd Roddy Collins over in Carlisle. Pat Fenton was up in Scotland and so forth. But it's good, and I think in general the League of Ireland brand, if you want to use that, is definitely on the up. But delighted for the North. Would have been a hell of a game if we ended up playing them. I prefer if that game were behind closed doors, being quite honest with you. There's one game I wouldn't like a crowd at, but it is what it is, and they have a great chance.
Just back to the national team, Gary, would you like to see Jack Byrne involved now tomorrow?
Well, this is something I'd probably ask Johnny and Dan, who know the League of Ireland better than me, because I'd ask the question and be able to give me an insight. Say in terms of the technical ability that Jack has, and I've heard about people talk glowingly about it, what really is the reason now for that he is back in the League of Ireland? That's not being critical of the league, not for one moment, but why has he kind of struggled in England, or why has he not gone on to like a higher level of play? And I'd be fascinated to know that.
Yeah, like I think with Jack, you know, Jack is he's a very, very capable and talented player. No one doubts that for a second. I know that the players in the senior squad can see that as well. And you'll know, Gary, you see someone training and you'll know. Yeah. And everyone sees it with Jack. Like Jack was 18, 19 when he was in the Dutch top flight with Canberra on loan, and he was very, very comfortable. And I think in his life, and it's something I've probably discussed with him in interviews and stuff like that. Like, you know, he's made some bad decisions. I think he's someone that needs. I think he needs a manager. He's probably one of these players that probably not quite needs a team built around him, but he needs a team that plays in a particular way for him to really shine. And like the key point of Jack's career really was when he went on loan to Blackburn, which was his second loan after Canberra. Canberra was brilliant. Went to Blackburn. They weren't having a great start to the championship, and he's one that, like, Jack can't play midfield in a 4-4-2 really. You know, he can't really, like, he can, but it's not necessarily his strongest suit, shall we say. And then didn't really happen from there. Went to Wigan, changed of manager, ended up in League One with Oldham, where he both did very well, but the further he went down the level, I don't think physically he was in great shape at that stage. I think he'd have a lot of regrets about, you know, I'm not sure if he was necessarily operating at the highest level that he should have been in terms of his day-to-day work. And he was playing at teams where the style didn't suit him. At Oldham, at one stage, he ended up out on the right of a 4-4-2 and stuff. And the one thing about the League of Ireland level is, listen, we can't be sensitive about it here. I mean, like it's really mixed. It's so unbelievably mixed, and sometimes it's just so easy for Jack. And what he's been able to do is come home, have a team built around them, not like a team that's quite technical, and all of a sudden, he's getting the time and space to show what he can do. Like he's really, and in the European games, I don't really think you can make a big case on the strength of his League of Ireland performances. I look at all of his European games he's played for Rovers across 2 seasons, and he's pretty much been excellent in every one of them because he's very, very comfortable on the ball. But he probably so the other night, right? People were shouting for Jack to be called into the team, and I'm a massive admirer of Jack. But once Alan Brown had been called in and was playing, I didn't necessarily see a role for him there because I don't think he could have been one of the two. Jeff Hendrick and Conor Howard, that sort of deeper sitting role that they were doing later on. He would have had to be the 10, but they actually needed someone to break off McGoldrick as they did. So there was no place for him the other night. But I think if Ireland are now in a situation where they do look like playing maybe 2 and a number 10 in certain games, then I can see a case for Jack. But it may not be with a McGoldrick. It's more that Jack is the number 10 in the game where you have maybe where there's an Adam Ida. And where there's a more off-the-shoulder front man. So I think he's well able to play at that level, but he drifted for 18 months or so. Wrong managers, wrong place. I think the English lower leagues can be very unforgiving once you start.
Absolutely.
And he got into that rush. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's why I asked the question, not because obviously I hear about his talent and stuff like that, and it's not no way at all being disparaging to the league. I didn't know whether or not it was a personal decision that he had to go back home. But it does make perfect sense because we've all had it where you're at a club where you just know it's not going to happen for you. I mean, I've had experiences of that. Of course I have. When you think you're going to struggle no matter how hard you try. It's just not a good fit. But I know that people talk so glowingly about him. So I thought it was a question just to ask you guys who know and have watched him so much, because, of course, I'm listening to lads who are around the squad saying, listen, he's comfortable at that level. It just posed the question. Yeah.
I think as well with Jack, it was interesting listening to what Conor Ronan said during the week. He's had a spell in Slovakia, now he's gone to Switzerland, and he's making the point. Conor Ronan is potentially a very good Irish senior player, and he's just making the point that he did what wasn't the normal thing to do, which was to go to somewhere that was basically away from where Irish players would normally go, and he was very happy to do that. And I think possibly with Brexit as well, if it ever happens, I think our cultural link with Britain might be slightly challenged, and I would like to see players that it's not always, he should go to England, because I don't think English football necessarily suits Jack. The pace of the game, Jack's ability to kind of off the ball, and his ability, Gary was on about the number 10, and the number 10, the defensive work he has to do now.
That's
Jack
so true.
Jack is going to fail in that regard. And, he wasn't... Like, Jack was in a bad place in England as well, Gary, and I this is so fitting of I honestly think technically with the ball at his feet, he's pretty much as good as anyone has for Ireland. I think he's... And I'd say the lads wouldn't disagree with that who play with him. But there's a lot more to it than that. And he was the embodiment of that Irish player, the star, the really young, a proper star, who was in a real downwards. And when you're going from... where he was to Oldham, which itself was a basket case club at the time, mentally he was in a bad place. So I think he's given himself a chance, JD.
Okay, got to take a break, Johnny, Dan and Gary. We'll speak about Jack Byrne, Josh Cullen moving to Anderlecht. Maybe Irish players need to move to Europe. On 53106, you can text us. Floods of them coming in on the Republic of Ireland. Back after 4.
News Talk Extra. Our email newsletter straight to your inbox. Sign up now at newstalk.com/extra.
At Experts Electrical Stores nationwide, there's washing, and there's the new Hotpoint washing machine. Hotpoint's new steam hygiene technology kills 99% of bacteria. That's clean. Plus, it'll do a full load in just 45 minutes and comes with a 2-year warranty. That's unbeatable. Discover Hotpoint steam hygiene at your local Experts Electrical Store and expert.ie.
I'm going to become a better baker. No more flat sponges or soggy bottoms. It's all fluffy cakes and snappy biscuits from here on out.
At Zurich Pensions, we believe small actions can have great impact.
My niece's birthday cake looked more like a donkey than a unicorn, but the next one will be perfect.
Take a small action for your future. Starting a Zurich pension is easier than you think, with helpful advice and online tools. Talk to a financial broker or visit zurich.ie.
Zurich Life Assurance plc is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
When it comes to reviewing your finances, a good place to start is by reviewing your mortgage. It's something few people ever do, but if you never review your mortgage, you'll never know if there might be a better option. That's where the Ulster Bank mortgage team could help. Wherever you bank, be sure to talk to us and see if switching could make a difference. Just search Ulster Bank Switch. Ulster Bank. Help for what matters. Over 18s only. Ulster Bank Ireland DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
I could share my fears. I could be vulnerable. The Irish Cancer Society nurses helped me right through my breast cancer journey. I'm Sarah and I'm asking you to support the Irish Cancer Society's breast cancer services this October. Please pick up your pink ribbon in selected Centra stores or give what you can today at cancer.ie. Kindly supported by Centra.
From the apartment in the city to the cottage in the country, at Energia, we're the power behind 250,000 customers across Ireland. And right now, there's never been a better time to join us and save on your electricity and gas with our cheapest dual fuel bundle. Wherever you're living, know you always get the biggest savings by coming direct to us. Go direct to energia.ie and switch today. Energia, the power behind your savings. EAB €1,413 based on average annual usage. 12-month contract, discounted unit rates, standing charge, PSO levy and carbon tax, T's and C's and early termination fee apply. Valid from October 2020 and subject to change. Verification and T's and C's at energia.ie/EAB.
Your tyres are the only point of contact between your car and the road. As the miles go by, the rubber thins and wears, distorts. It happens gradually. You'll only notice it if you check them. Or if one day you hit the brakes and there's nothing left. Worn tyres are a contributory factor in 14 road deaths in Ireland on average each year. When your tyres lose grip, you lose everything. Check them. A message from the Road Safety Authority.
Join the switching revolution at Carphone Warehouse today. We've got exclusive deals you won't find anywhere else. Like get the Samsung S10 for free when you switch to a €40 a month plan with Vodafone. Or get the iPhone SE for only €49 when you switch to a €35 a month plan with free. Remember, these deals are exclusive to Carphone Warehouse. Carphone Warehouse, for the best deals on your mobile TV and broadband. Offer subject to availability in 24-month contract.
Porrick here from Horkins. Have you lawn moss in your garden? Not a problem. Apply Zero to control moss in your lawn. Zero is now available for you to order on horkins.ie.
Afternoons are easy with insuremyvan.ie, Ireland's low-cost van insurance specialist. Get your business back on the road with Insure My Van's best price guarantee. For super savings, visit insuremyvan.ie. City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as insuremyvan.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The GAA Championships are back on Sky Sports. Enjoy all the action.
Close controls. Wonderful hands.
Feel all the drama.
A moment of magic.
Watch it all live.
So strong. What a finish.
Be inside the game with all live GAA games on Sky Sports Mix for all Sky customers at no extra cost.
That's unbelievable.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.
We're 10 months into 2020. It's fair to say none of us saw this coming. But what does the future hold for our office spaces, city centres and day-to-day lives? And what role will technology play as we focus on the future? We've no crystal ball, but this week on Embedded Tech in Town, we'll look to answer some of these questions.
Embedded Tech in Town.
With Jess Kelly.
Thanks to Salesforce.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now, or tune in this evening at 8.
On News Across Ireland. This is the IMRO Radio Awards National Station of the Year. This is News Talk.
It's 4 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Burke. Hospital admissions for COVID-19 are now at a 4-month high after 18 more people were let in the past 24 hours. 194 patients are being treated in the acute hospital system, the highest figure since the 2nd of June. Cork GP Dr. Nuala O'Connor says the situation can get serious if admissions to hospitals and ICUs continue to rise.
You would expect that, God forbid, if you were involved in a road traffic accident, that you would have access to really, really high intensity quality care if you needed it. The difficulty is that if our hospitals get overwhelmed with COVID, it's all the other things that they can't do.
Meanwhile, 902 more cases of the virus have been detected in the north this afternoon. 134 people are in hospital with the virus there today, with 19 being treated in intensive care. There are calls for clear guidelines around the introduction of a graduated system of fines for people who break the rules on face covers or travel. No decision has yet been made on the scale of any such fines. Frank Thornton from the Garda Representative Association says more clarity is needed.
We would just be waiting on the legislation and guidelines that are going to follow with these proposed sanctions. They need to be very clear, and there needs to be very clear messages to the public as to how these are to be implemented.
A man's been arrested at a protest in Dublin city centre this afternoon. The man in his 30s was detained over a public order offence at Kildare Street and Molesworth Street. Gardaí say they remain at the scene of the protest. It's 5 years today since 10 people were killed in a fire at an emergency housing site for travellers in Carrickmines in South Dublin. 5 children, their parents and an uncle were killed when the mobile home they were sleeping in caught fire as a result of a cooking fire. Bernard Joyce, director of the Irish Traveller Movement, says local councils are still failing to draw down grants to improve conditions.
We are looking at this year alone a percentage of the budget not being drawn down. We're seeing time and time again local authorities' failure to draw down funding. In some areas the situation is really, really appalling and it's just unacceptable. The overcrowding, it's a growing concern.
It's 2 minutes past 4.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA. Download the new AA app to request a roadside rescue and track the patrol right to your car.
A mix of sunny spells and scattered showers. The rain will be mostly in the north and northwest later. Highest temperatures of 12 to 14 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Minimal contact in stadiums shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 5 o'clock in the company of Gary Breen, the former Republic of Ireland defender, the Irish independent journalist Dan McDonnell, and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Speaking about the beautiful game, but thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net. You can text us 53106 about the national team, the performance in Slovakia, the defeat, the exit from the European Championship. You can tweet us at Off the Ball. You can watch us as well now. We're streaming on the OTB social channels for Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball, for YouTube, for Facebook, and on the new OTB Sports app. Search OTB Sports in your app store now to download it for iOS and Android. Just sporting news, Polish youngster Iga Świątek has beaten Sofia Kenin in straight sets to claim her first ever Grand Slam title at the French Open. The 19-year-old saw off the Australian Open winner 6-4, 6-1 at Roland Garros in Paris this afternoon. Remember, it's Nadal against Djokovic tomorrow. In the golf, in the BMW PGA Championship, the flagship event of the European Tour, Shane Lowry in second place in the third round. 3 holes to go, level par for his round, 12 under par for the championship, 1 shot behind England's Tyrrell Hatton, who leads on 13 under par. There's a gap then from Lowry of 2 shots to David Horsey, Tommy Fleetwood, Patrick Reed, the American, and Joachim Hansen of Denmark. So Shane Lowry well poised to contend now for the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth, a course that he loves. Lads, we were speaking there before the break about Jack Byrne and maybe players looking beyond the horizons of England, as always England, to Europe, maybe to play football. We saw Josh Cullen during the week go to Anderlecht. Gary, you know more, I think, than anybody in the world about the Eredivisie in Holland. Do you think it's a good idea maybe for players to go and look a bit beyond England for their careers?
Yeah, I absolutely do. If I had a son who was looking to play football, I would do everything I could to get him over to the Eredivisie in terms of the learning, the level of coaching. I know probably the clubs over in England now are catching up, but I've had the pleasure of commentating on it for the last 2-3 seasons, so I've got an insight into the education you get there. But I also had one in terms of David Connolly, my roommate for Ireland all those years ago. In 1996, he signed for Feyenoord as an 18-year-old. And he came back to the Irish squad doing things that we'd never seen before, generally had in terms of his stretching and stuff like that, his diet, what supplements he was taking. He was streets ahead of even players from United at the time, what they were doing with the Irish squad, the likes of Roy, Dennis Irwin and stuff like that. And you're talking about one of the biggest clubs in the world. So in terms of the education, yeah, absolutely. I would definitely encourage it. I really would. I remember, obviously, John O'Shea went over to Belgium and had a great early learning curve there prior to getting into the Manchester United team. And I agree with you. I think if you look at the difference that Josh Cullen will have now, because he's a player I've seen quite a lot of at Charlton, one of the local teams to where I live in Kent. And he excelled there for them. He really did in terms of his ability on the ball. He was really, really impressive. But then he goes back to West Ham and there's no pathway for him, really. I know he might get the odd League Cup game, but it's not enough for his development to really, really continue. So that move to Anderlecht, I think is a brilliant one for him. I genuinely do. And I would encourage all Irish players to do that. It was interesting listening to Dan and Johnny talking about Jack going over into England, because even as a young professional in England, I always looked at those lads coming over at times 15 or 16 years of age, having to leave their loved ones, their family behind, coming over to England. It's always going to be a massive challenge. It really is. And how often have we seen those guys as kids really come over, not quite happen for them on that occasion, but then go back to the League of Ireland, learn what it means to play regular football, and then come back to England or wherever, another league, as a far more accomplished player. So in terms of a player's development, I would definitely encourage it. I really would.
I feel very strongly on that. Sorry, Dan. I just feel very strongly on that last point that Gary was making there, because like we as a country, we very, very much failed the young people of this country for a long time who pursued something in sport. And when
a dream.
we had...
Yeah.
What's that?
A dream, Johnny, yeah.
Yeah, like when we had mass immigration in, say, the 50s and the 80s, and the economy was in a bad way and all that, it was very sad what happened in this country. Right, going back to the famine days when we had mass immigration and desolation left and all that. But if you go to the footballers who left this country because they pretty much had to because the Irish product was so bad, that was a failure not only of football in this country, but it was a failure really of the state, that there wasn't proper structures, because it shouldn't be. You look what's happened in rugby and the resources there for the players, and the amount of players, and this is kind of anecdotal, but if you talk to any of the players who've come back, the disappointment and today's World Mental Health Day, the depression that can set in when you come back as a perceived failure. And I'd imagine mentally it was very hard for that young player who went over as the best in the class, went over there then and realised he wasn't, the best in the next class in England, and came back and he wasn't even probably the best in the class he came back to, because mentally he'd gone down that much. And this is a massive, massive opportunity for the government to work with the football community in this country to help build academies, because once Brexit happens, as it is now, no minors can leave this country to go to Britain as footballers like they have for years and years and years. And for me, this is not only good for the kids who can get their education, and as Gary said, I mean, I went to America for like 2 months when I was 15. I was excited. I couldn't get over my excitement. And within a week or two over there, I was incredibly homesick. And I was surrounded by family. And you can imagine if you're in a town that's alien to you in England and your football career is going badly and you're only 15, 16 years of age. So any politicians who are listening in and, aren't aware of this, there is a massive opportunity to be part of a revolution in terms of the kids of the future of this country who can stay here, and if they want then and they're good enough after 18, by all means go. But it was a sad state of affairs that they had to leave this country, and many had very sad consequences as well.
I think I just want to come in on the one thing about the debate about whether players should go overseas, and it's another factor, and it maybe comes back to Jack's case a small bit. Like, you can't underestimate, I suppose, the financial aspect of this and the cultural aspect of this as well. Like, if you look at someone like Jack, for example, who went to Man City, and the moves that he made after Blackburn, Wigan, Oldham, they were all sort of within driving distance of Manchester. I think he had a house there. And like, Jack was brilliant in Canberra. And of course he had options to go back over there. But I mean, from my understanding of it, there was like 3, 4, 5 times as much on offer to play lower league football than there is top flight football in a league outside of the UK. And that's just a fact, and like, we naturally encourage players to be more open-minded, but they've come through, say, in an academy environment at 16, 17, where people are around them, and maybe some of them are making the big bucks, and they've made it at the Premier League, and they want to keep up a certain lifestyle. There's a maturity aspect with that, where I think people in time look at it in a different way. I mean, a couple of years back, Ronan Curtis, I think, had an opportunity to go to Sweden, and again didn't fancy the move, but like, it's interesting times in the lower leagues in England now. I think people have to be very conscious of that. Like, the salary cap that's been brought in now in League One and League Two, I think you're going to start seeing a bit of an impact on that in a couple of years' time. And it might be harder for some of the deals that are on offer. at that lower league level in England may not be there. And that, unfortunately, is part of the factor. I would, in theory, there'd be a lot of players from Ireland who'd be much better suited to going to the continent than they would to go and play for wherever it might be, Preston or somewhere. But that's where their mates are. That's where they're culturally affiliated to. That's where the money is, basically. And players will follow that to some degree, whether it's right or wrong. They will, and that is a big part of the debate. That you look to the leagues around Europe where yes, the top clubs are paying good money, but a lot of the clubs lower down actually aren't, and that's a factor that I just don't think you can have this debate without acknowledging it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But even Dan, on that,
go on.
On that, saying about David Connolly going over to Feyenoord at 18, he was actually the highest paid player in all of the league.
Yeah.
And you're talking about some legendary Dutch players who, and yet those financial restrictions are massive, of course, there in terms of your decision making. When I was coaching, my first coaching job at Barnet, obviously North London, and you're trying to get players to come, but you've got to put in place that they're going to try and live in North London, one of the most expensive places in the country of England to live in. So it's so difficult. You have to weigh all those things up, of course.
It's harder to make it, though, as well now. Like, we do think about Frank Stapleton, Liam Brady and David Leary all went over together in 1973, I think, to London.
Yeah.
And they all made it. And the guy, I think it was Johnny Murphy, ended up playing rugby for Ireland. Ronnie Whelan going over, like the late 70s to Liverpool. And these are players like playing in the very top clubs. It's just very unlikely to happen now. And I think that is good into your point about academies, Johnny, in that, like, I was at the Ajax Spurs game last year. You had De Jong, you had Van de Beek, and you had De Ligt. And they've all gone to three of the top European clubs, Juventus, Barcelona and Manchester United. Now, in a way, it's a kind of a sad the way the Ajax were picked apart like vultures. After that great run the Champions League.
Listen, Ajax do their little vulturing themselves. Don't forget that.
Absolutely.
I think they think that the lad who's gone to Barcelona came through the ranks. He didn't. They nicked him from, I'm not sure if it was Willem 12 or 20. So people forget that.
Well,
yes,
I think
so true.
I think that they're probably, like, that's going to happen in Ireland as well. I think the stronger clubs will. They'll shall we say nick them from the smaller clubs. But like culturally, it's going to be interesting as well. Like, are we going to be more European in our output as Irish people if Brexit happens? Will the cultural link with England be quite as strong as it was? I definitely would like to see more Irish players play in countries other than England and Scotland, and I think we should want that. It was fascinating talking to Jack before the AC Milan Rovers game, because he'd known one of the players from his Man City days, and that's, as you said, JD, there when those Irish lads went over, they went over to a league that was primarily British and Irish players. And Stephen Kenny has made this point. It's not necessarily that Irish players have gotten worse, it's that the Premier League is so globalised now that it kind of has almost the best of everything, or it certainly has the resources for the best of everything. So I actually think at the moment, in terms of the amount of Irish players in the Premier League and the young players coming up, I think we're in a fairly healthy place relative to where we were. And that was also just not without going overboard about the match the other night and so forth. We've so many players to come in that I think even if half of them work out, we've massive underage talent, and that's what's exciting about the future, because as much as you lose a game on penalties, you've got to think of the long-term goal as well.
I get some text in here on 53106. Hopefully Jack Byrne can do what Keith Fahey did over to England when he was young, came back to the League of Ireland, then back to England when he was more mature. That is from Ed. Phil on Twitter think there's loads of scope in Connolly, McGoldrick, Robinson front three, but absolutely agree that Connolly's directness and goal threat is what gives it a sharp end. Otherwise it's just good link-up work and hard work. Paul Little on Twitter think Gary's spot on when McGoldrick needs to start as a 9 who drops in and causes problems. Hence, at least one of the other top two need to be a natural striker rather than a wide man who attacks him outside to in. Connolly definitely fits that description. What's the lad's opinion on James McCarthy? I've never seen him doing the basics of midfield play, as in taking the ball, moving into a better position and insisting on the ball being passed to him to repeat as necessary. He spends the games pointing directions but never doing it himself. A non-entity in games for Ireland. Why is he picked, says McDara? Gary?
I think, well, I'll take that all day. I think he's, if he's fit, he's a key component of how Stephen Kenny wants to play. I thought it was interesting, Dan was saying about earlier on in the conversation how the philosophy that Stephen Kenny would have had in terms of his 4-3-3 and one holding midfielder, 2 advanced midfielders, was changed after those first 2 games because he quickly realised that one holding midfielder cannot give them centre-half the protections they need. And I don't care what anyone says, it's very difficult for one holding midfielder to cover the whole width of a pitch. I think even N'Golo Kanté struggles to do that. So just by dropping Connor in there alongside him, thickened it up. But the big concern and the frustration again is that James got injured, but a fit, and which we've seen at Crystal Palace, he's a very good midfielder. Have no doubt about that.
I'm still not convinced, to be honest. I think we were better probably when he wasn't playing the other night. Probably does, like Gary mentioned, the work that the more advanced midfielders do in terms of off the ball. I honestly thought that our most impressive midfielder was Hourihane when he dropped deep, as well as Brown. Obviously, he was kind of playing more advanced, but I'm not sure James McCarthy is any more advanced in terms of being a definite starter, and I think he probably still will start. But whatever team is picked tomorrow, I think those midfielders, obviously Malumbi's coming up as well, I think they'll sense that there are places up for grabs there, because Hourihane, I felt that whatever about McCarthy, I think Hourihane has badly failed in terms of the quality he has on the ball. I think we only really saw that, and we didn't fully see it because he still gave it away a bit. But we saw him, I thought he really epitomised the new Ireland the other night, in that he looked like he was really enjoying it, whereas the midfielders have looked like they've run away from the ball. And Hourihane, for me, is almost more interesting going forward than McCarthy, who I still think has a bit to prove for Ireland.
But I think though, Johnny, I think you're going to need someone. If you have that too, you're going to need, McCarthy is still someone who covers a bit of ground, breaks up play a lot better than Conor Hourihane ever would. You're still going to need that type of player there. Now, it's possible that Malumbi becomes, which I wouldn't necessarily have seen before as a thing where Malumbi would be an option for McCarthy. But if he is going to play the 2, it's a bit, in that it's a bit different. That I don't think you're going to have a situation where it's Hourihane and, I don't know, Robbie Brady in there or something. I don't think that's going to be it. Or Harry Arter's, I suppose, the other one that comes into the mix.
Also the fact he got injured again, Dan. That's just kind of
that's the problem. And I think that's the type of thing that plants a seed, because if you're trying to build something and you have an idea and a plan in mind, you have to be sure to trust that this person is going to be around. Or else who's your closest to a like-for-like replacement for them? And I don't know, Gary, I don't know who has the closest attributes for your mind for McCarthy then, if he's not going to be around. I don't know, trusting all as well, and everyone, we're finding out today how everyone is after 120 minutes and I know McCarthy is definitely struggling. So if he doesn't play tomorrow, but you want to play a similar system, what 2 do you like?
Well, I think in terms, I would drop Jeff back there again. I agree with Johnny there in terms of Connor, in terms of his personality, but I think we saw it under Mick McCarthy more than anything, in terms of him being bullish, getting on the set pieces. And I want that personality from Connor to come out even more, because if you guys notice that as soon as Robbie Brady comes on, he just absolutely pushes Connor out of the way on free kicks, corners, and I'm like, come on, show a bit of strength of character. I know Robbie's a bullish character himself, wants to get on it. Of course he does. He's desperate to do well. But Connor needs to have that standing in that group to say, no, step aside. I'm on the free kicks. I'm on the corners and what have you. I think Conor Hourihane as a holding midfielder would concern me. I think the fact that you drop him back there alongside McCarthy as a number 6, you collect play then, because the game comes to you. I'd be worried about him being any more advanced and sensing danger and getting in quick enough, because I don't think he does that particularly well. But there's an offset again in terms of him starting deeper as 2 number 6s, is that, as Johnny said, you don't get that left foot of a wand near the opposition's goal enough, because when he is in and around there, he's such a threat. He really is. He's got real quality in that foot, and you want him to be having strikes on goal. But I think that Jeff going back there alongside him the other night, and then Brown being the advanced midfielder, I think it looked well. I know that the kind of how we were chasing the game, or the game was in the balance, the game was getting stretched. But I felt that he really affected Slovakia when Brown come in there. I think they panicked a little bit and started to drop deeper, and we got real foothold in the game.
Is there a worry about his place at all at Villa with Barkley coming in?
Now, of course, as soon as you see that signing, you think that, don't you? Of course you do. But he saw off a lot of big money signings last summer, didn't he, in midfield in terms of coming up with Villa. So he obviously has that strength of character. He's proved that coming from Barnsley, and that statement that he said, listen, I'm going to play in the Premier League one day. So he's got that bullish character about him in terms of within him. But I just want to see him express it in the games in terms of not being dominated by the likes of Robbie Brady.
I think as well, go on, Johnny. Knight, and Jason Knight, Coventry, Malumbi, these players do look pretty above average in terms of what Jason Knight has done at his age is very striking.
He's the one to watch, Johnny.
Yeah, like Conor Coventry as well, Dan, though. Like, it's just what I've only seen Conor Coventry play with the 21s, and Malumbi was getting a lot of the credit. But like the game against Sweden in Tala last year, he dropped. He came in second half, from what I recall. He was absolutely brilliant in that sitting position, and he's a long way to go. But I think these players are definitely there to progress, and you do have to kind of start thinking about what is up and coming, because these lads aren't a million miles off, and Knight is having a fantastic time with it as well.
53106. I feel it's amazing what Kenny got the team to do on Thursday night with the time he had with them. He'd been playing the way he wanted, even with the late call on Connolly. They played with confidence and belief. Looking forward to renewing my Ireland season ticket and getting back to the Viva. We all are. Thank you on 53106. Hi lads, what struck me most on Thursday was how, unlike all our previous playoffs, what the match was like. Those ties over the years against Holland, Belgium, Turkey, Iran, France, Estonia, they were all hard earned and had huge build-ups. The qualifying process and expanded tournaments have really devalued the occasion. On a positive note, the performance was definitely an improvement on the last few years. That is from Colin in Killarney. Lads, Kenny got it wrong. For most of the game, we were no threat, no shot on target until 60 minutes against a limited team that were open at the back, says Ger in Kildare. Alex on YouTube, I really like this. I was born in 1998, so I was too young to remember the World Cup side, etc. Going off in 2014 onward. From when I was old enough to understand football, last night was the best Irish performance I have seen. Just on the Wales and Finland games, Dan, before you go, because I know you have to go, I don't think we're going to top the Nations League group. So the importance of these matches, is it like seedings? I know we're on the cusp of the second and third tier with the World Cup qualifiers, which are now going to be played March, draw December. The importance of these matches this week. Yeah,
you've sort of summarised it there to some degree. It would be fantastic if Ireland could top their Nations League group, because it gives you a very good chance of a playoff option if you don't finish in the top two in your group, which of course is why Ireland were in the playoff this time around. It's a bit more, it's tighter with the World Cup. It's more that you very much have to win your group to get that chance, whereas in the Euros, Ireland finished bottom of the Nations League group and still got their chance. So it's very different because there's only 13 places available. You would have thought 1 point from 6 last month. It's a challenge to win the group now without beating Wales, at least once. But the bigger picture probably is that, as you mentioned, Ireland are right on the cusp at the moment of second or third seeding for that World Cup qualifying draw. So good results, positive results for the remainder of the year would help you stay on the right side of the cut and be second. Now, sometimes there isn't a massive difference between the second and third pots. But, I mean, if you end up with a big gun down in pot 2, you can get that nightmare draw. So it is worth being on that second one and take your chances, and hopefully things go well. So, I think there's obviously a morale boosting, confidence, this era growing angle as to why you want these games to go well. Just naturally you want Ireland games to go well. But there is an incentive in the results too that it might smooth the path a bit next year, because the World Cup is difficult to qualify for. It's really, really tough to qualify for. You can probably have a great campaign and not qualify, but being in pot 2, you would hope would make things easier. So there's stuff to play for here, definitely. And I think a Sunday 2:00 game 3 days after you've lost the playoff, I don't know. I think it's going to be a struggle, but I would hope they can get through it, and that certainly by the Finland game on Wednesday they're fully back in the game. But I think it's a good test of maybe, I don't know, maybe Gary from the player, maybe it's just a great focus to have a game rather than you go away and you wallow in it. But I'd imagine the 24 hours yesterday were tough.
Yeah, Yeah, they would have been. There's no doubt about it. And at times you want to go home, lick your wounds and whatever, get back to your family. But I see it as a positive. I really do. I think that they, as a group, they can grieve together. I mean, grieve in sporting terms, but they can grieve together of not making that. I think contact time with the squad is at a premium with the coaching staff. So I think they'll really look forward to it. I think those players who didn't play will want to put their hands up and say, listen, I want to be part of this going forward. So I think it's a real positive. I do. I know it's a challenge physically in terms of the quick turnaround in games, but I think it's a good opportunity for them to really get together and say to themselves, listen, we're hurting and we don't ever want to experience this again. This, as Dan says, the Nation League is a stepping stone to that World Cup. It's so important in terms of the seedings. It really is. So I think they need to go in there with a real positive frame of mind.
I'm just going through the Wales lineup from the other night when they got stuffed by England in that friendly. No Gareth Bale, obviously, he's injured. Daniel James, Gary, look, what's happened there? It's kind of a sad one because when he started that Manchester United season last year, he was flying.
He was, and he was a player that they were really relying on at certain times in terms of giving them that counter-attacking pace because they were so one-dimensional, Manchester United, weren't they? So, but this happens, John, you know, in terms of young players. It can be very up and down in terms of your form, especially at a massive club like Manchester United. And of course, he'd have been aware. The reason he ain't playing for Manchester United is because he's got an absolute superstar of a young player behind him, Greenwood, who's come in and looks like he's going to score every game he plays. So I'm sure that he'll be firing on all cylinders for that game tomorrow. So he'll be certainly one we'll have to watch. OK, guys, Dan, we got to let you go. Speak soon. I know there's a press conference going on at the moment. 53106 for the listeners. You got some more text on the Republic of Ireland or the transfer window, which closed the other day. Thomas Partey to Arsenal. Ozil left out of the squad. Arsenal fans, what do you think of it? And Manchester United fans, Edinson Cavani, is he the answer to your problems? Back after this.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
We're 10 months into 2020. It's fair to say none of us saw this coming. But what does the future hold for our office spaces, city centres and day-to-day lives? And what role will technology play as we focus on the future? We've no crystal ball, but this week on Embedded Tech in Town, we'll look to answer some of these questions.
Embedded Tech in Town
with Jess Kelly.
Thanks to Salesforce.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now, or tune in this evening at 8
on News Talk.
Living a busy life and want to avoid colds and flu? When you start feeling run down, reach for A-Vogel Echinaforce, made from fresh echinacea herb. A-Vogel Echinaforce is a natural remedy that helps fight colds and flu by strengthening the body's immune system. A-Vogel Echinaforce, available at health stores and pharmacies nationwide. Always read the leaflet.
The efficiency of air fibre coming into our building really helped keep our brand alive at a really difficult time.
Air Gigabit Fibre Broadband for Business is a faster, more reliable connection from €30 a month. Just ask Nora Lynn Murray of the Armada Hotel in Clare. For more, call 1800 400 555. Air, let's make possible. Subject to availability, €30 a month for the first 4 months, €55 a month thereafter ex-VAT. 24-month minimum contract period for 1 gigabit FTTP. Early cease charges may apply. Offer available for a limited time. For full details and terms, see business.air.ie.
At Leia Healthcare, we always want to give our members more. So now you get unrestricted access to a world of benefits that will help you stay healthy. From convenient video calls with a GP to get prescriptions online, to easy access to experts when you finally want to do something about your ropey knee or dodgy back. And if you do need to see someone urgently, our clinics are available for minor injuries, all without you needing to put your hand in your pocket. Let's stay on top of your health, in every way. Leia Healthcare, looking after you always.
Insurance provided by Ellipse Insurance Limited trading as Leia Healthcare. Leia Healthcare Limited trading as Leia Healthcare and Leia Life is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Unrestricted benefits are available until the end of December. Fair usage policy applies.
At Centra, we have everything you need. Like Centra Fresh Charged Lamb Loin Chops, half price now €10.99 per kilo. Persil Liquid Range 24 wash, half price now €5.07 each. And until Sunday, Coors Light 20 bottle box, only €19.68. Centra, live every day. Enjoy cold sensibly.
At Audi, we know different people have different milestones. Whether it's your firstborn, saying I do, celebrating a birthday,
Happy birthday!
or even buying your first Audi. Make this milestone one to remember. Enjoy a range of finance offers from the 16th to the 25th of October with the Audi Milestones 2021 sales event.
At
At Guaranteed Irish, we believe enterprise is at the heart of thriving communities.
Like Me to You, the nationwide multi-store gift card accepted in over 5,000 retailers, including Brown Thomas, Penneys, Lifestyle Sports, Tesco, and exclusively in Smith's Toys, Applegreen and Home Store and more. It's also the gift card of choice for many of Ireland's largest and best-known employers, so remember me2u.ie when rewarding staff this year, while also supporting Irish retail. Available online or in-store at Applegreen. So look out for it. Guaranteed Irish. Altogether better.
It takes a certain kind of brave to run a business. At AIB, we know that right now this is especially true, which is why we're offering low-cost, flexible finance to businesses through the government's new COVID-19 credit guarantee scheme, so that you can keep your business going and growing. Inquire online at aib.ie/SBCI or talk to us today on 0818 227 058. Lines open from Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. AIB, we back brave. Lender criteria, terms and conditions apply. Allied Irish Banks plc is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Now that home is more important than ever, make the most of it with dining furniture from Harvey Norman. With chairs in all shapes and sizes and a great selection of dining tables to suit your home. Dine in style this festive season. Order now and get delivered in time for Christmas. See our full range in store or online at harveynorman.ie.
I'll send an SOS to the world.
Our world cannot wait another minute. And while everyone has a part to play in the fight against climate change, we at EirGrid are stepping up too, safely making the national grid more resilient so that by 2030, 70% of Ireland's electricity can come from renewable sources. You can see how, with your support, we're stepping up to deliver a cleaner energy future at airgrid.ie.
When you think about it, how do you keep your business fresh in challenging times? Simply put, work with a solid marketing partner like Snap. Snap can deliver your business plans and goals with design, print, signage, and other key areas like websites, video production, and promotional products. They've dedicated centres around the country with fast turnaround times, quality accreditation, and a track record working with Irish companies for nearly 40 years. What's not to like? You heard it here first, folks. Visit snap.ie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Minimal contact in stadiums shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5 o'clock in the company now of the former Republic of Ireland defender Gary Breen and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward to talk about football until 5. Remember, our football coverage brought to you thanks to Paddy Power. Good text to start this one off, Gary and Johnny. 53106 lads. Manchester United's main signing during the transfer window should have been a new manager. If Solskjaer wasn't the Man United manager, would he be on the radar of any top European club to manage them? The answer is no. His disastrous appointment was an emotional one based purely on his past as a player. That is from Derek. Gary, what do you think of that?
Well, I agree with that in terms of I don't think if he leaves Manchester United, he's going to get a top job. I generally don't believe that because his CV doesn't warrant it. But I would be mindful that management, as I said to you before, John, has become very bespoke. It's not about whether or not you have that CV that warrants these big clubs, because we've seen Arteta at Arsenal, Lampard at Chelsea, and obviously Solskjaer at Manchester United. It's whether or not you're a good fit for that club. But there's no doubt he has got that job back on the back of a playing CV as opposed to a managerial one.
Cavani, will he be Zlatan or Falcao? I'm just going through the stats here. Zlatan, 29 goals in 53 games for United. Falcao, 4 in 29.
Well, listen, in terms of that, Falcao was never fit, was he? We remember how good he was before he got an injury. And if you talk to people like John Terry, when he played against him for Chelsea, said he was incredible, his movement. But he had such a bad knee injury that he was never the same player again. If you're looking at Cavani now in terms of the fact he hasn't played much football because of the pandemic, but he looks in great shape, even for his age. He really does. And if you've got a player anywhere near the level that he has been, he's a fantastic footballer. He really is as a centre forward. But the only thing that you're looking at, if they'd have made this decision to sign him, because he was available for a good few months before they did it, you'd be thinking, OK, we can understand your thinking. But it's just a time frame that it was done at the last minute when they realised finally that Dortmund weren't going to do business on Sancho, that they thought, well, we need to get someone in. So that's why I think the criticism comes that it smacks a little bit of desperation. But I wouldn't think he's going to be a bigger failure as people are suggesting.
Is he a squad then? Is he a squad signing? Is he going to be straight into the first team? And who's going to make way if he does come into the first team?
Well, he's a centre forward, so straight away you're looking at Martial in terms of that. But sometimes you can make a signing, John, where you bring somebody into the building and it elevates the other guys because they're thinking, well, you're not taking my jersey. And I think at times, if there's any criticism of Martial, it's that he just goes through the motions. He don't seem to have that devilment in him in a way that someone like Ronaldo did, and that desire to be the best he could possibly be. So we'll see, and we will see whether or not it proves to be a good signing or not. But certainly the business or the lack of it that Manchester United have done it and the way they've conducted it has left them open to some massive criticism from some high-profile people who have been in and around Manchester United.
Johnny, would you be critical? Do you think that a poor transfer market, like your man in the League of Gentlemen would just say that it was just a saga now, and that's what the Sancho thing was for me, like a complete tabloid dream every single day, and then nothing happens. Alex Telles is signed, which is a left back, but Paul Pogba flirting with Real Madrid again. Will the big Spanish, Italian, German clubs take Paul Pogba at this stage? I don't know. Johnny? I think we got your audio's gone, Johnny, on the side.
Sorry, I think you might have me now.
Yeah, I got you now, Johnny. You're off mute.
That was the best performance from me in some time there. But I just Gary's elongated sigh in the background on the.
That was me, actually, Johnny. Don't worry.
Was the mention of Pogba? I mean, it's just how do you come out of the performances that he's produced so far this season? I thought he was very, very poor against Brighton, and obviously the last day then, and then to come out with this sort of nonsense. I mean, their transfer dealings are strange. It was so, speaking of elongated, just such an on-off thing. The Cavani thing to me is just it's there's no real kind of strategy there in signing the player like that at the last minute. It may or may not work out, but Pogba has to go for me. I think if Solskjaer, maybe he's bigger than Solskjaer in terms of the club and all that, but he's just, I just thought it was very, very poor form to say that in the context of Man United where they're at the moment. And Solskjaer he just doesn't seem to have that kind of mental fortitude, that maybe that whiff of autocracy, or that to inculcate fear in his players when Pogba's behaving like that. And I think they've been quite pathetic this season, to be honest. I thought Solskjaer getting the job was absolutely absurd. He didn't have the CV. At the same time, if you appoint a manager, I firmly believe he deserves a chance, and he's probably edging towards the swan song of his chances at this stage, unless they improve quickly, I think, because it's very, very poor.
Alex Telles, will he improve them defensively, Gary? Because I was thinking that maybe they needed another centre half. Is the holding midfield position right at United? They're signing a lot of like Cavani is kind of a luxury. He's a forward. He's not somebody that is going to arrest the slide of their defensive issues that they've had. Like I thought they were great before lockdown, but they come back. Brighton hit the post 5 times, and then maybe the Spurs game would have turned out differently. But Spurs were still 2-1 up and in the ascendancy before that sending off.
Yeah, listen, in terms of the priority, even before, you're right, before those performances, even the way they finished the season last year or whatever, you still weren't convinced by them defensively. And I mean, they've just imploded there. Telles comes in, is he an upgrade on Shaw? Listen, he's a good player, there's no doubt about it. But obviously, I keep saying this, the Premier League asks questions of you that no other leagues do. So that's a challenge for him. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of Pogba, just going back to that, John, you hear about him caught in Real Madrid, and Johnny's right there. Do you remember when, like, say, for example, Wayne Rooney questioned Manchester United and Ferguson was he was on him straight away to say, don't you ever do that again. But also Ronaldo, because we all knew, it wasn't a secret that Ronaldo courted Real Madrid, but not courted, but had a dream about playing for Real Madrid that he had since he was a kid. And so Manchester United were aware of that, but he'd done it with such respect, Ronaldo, that he made it known, but he never kept coming out with it. And certainly his performances, week in, week out, suggested that he was firing on all cylinders for Manchester United. Yes, one day he wants to play for Real Madrid, but he was taking care of business now. And I agree with Johnny. You think about those performances of Pogba for Manchester United, and you're thinking, and there's even been a statement from Real Madrid representative to say, listen, it's not something we're interested in at the moment. I don't know whether or not they're saying that to make sure that the price goes down on him, but he's got to be careful. And if you want to make moves from Manchester United who are struggling by their usual standards, and you want to go to Real Madrid, you've got to be performing better than this.
I just don't know how you can just turn it on and off like a tap. And eventually people think, the boys cried wolf.
Well, he can't.
Yeah, it's shocking.
He's not turning it on and off, is he?
Yeah, it's so disappointing as a professional. And you know, Roy Keane, you know, he's doing all his stuff on Sky and all that, and I think, you know, Roy Keane is box office and all this, and I think he's given probably far too much headlines in terms of what he says. But one thing, Roy Keane, he would not abide by that nonsense. You're paid by a club. You're paid to play for the club. You're paid very well. All your whims are, you're a pampered professional, and to be just turning it on and off as he has done, and just literally not showed up in games so often, you know, for me that's just an indictment of his character, and I just can't see why he's still there once he has that in him to basically just not give a damn at times.
But you know, it's an example of the standing of Manchester United right now, that players are at the club, but are half looking over the fence to see, is the grass greener over there? You never, you know, normally trying to get rid of Manchester United players, they'd be going and dragging their heels. They wouldn't want to leave. Jaap Stam, we think about those scenarios. You know, Beckham, Ferguson getting rid of these players, even Roy Keane getting rid of them. They never wanted to leave Manchester United.
No, Roy Keane definitely didn't want to leave, and that was why it was quite a fractious departure. Because Kiraj and Ferguson, I think they might have just said to themselves, you know what, maybe Roy's not, you know, he's just got that tipping point, and that's where it all got a little bit acrimonious. Arsenal, like, how did they come to this for Mesut Ozil, lads? Like, World Cup winner, 350 grand a week, left out of the Europa League squad this week, offering to pay a mascot in a dinosaur's costume, Gunnosaurus salary for the year. It's Arsenal's a strange situation.
Yeah, it is. But in terms of that, in Mesut Ozil, I mean, I'm a big Arsenal fan. Everyone knows that. But he's not behaving any differently to how he did the day he walked into the club. He's not down in tools. He's not causing them a problem on the pitch with ill discipline. He's not running his mouth off in the press. It is just that the new manager does not fancy the way he plays. So if he wants to stay there and see out his contract, he's more than within his rights. Now, Arsenal fans may be coming on and saying, well, it's not that, it's because he doesn't run about. He's never run about. You know, he's not changed one bit in terms of how he's playing. It's just that the club's dynamic and how they want to play, and that they don't have Arsene Wenger just letting players do what they want, really, towards the end of his tenure. It's just that Arteta's come in. There's an emphasis now that every player, we talked about it now in terms of that number 10 role, in terms of standing still, is nearly redundant now in terms of what you've got to achieve, in terms of being a part of an 11, part of a framework that you've got to work just as hard out of possession as in possession. But Ozil's not changed one bit, fully entitled to stay there and take his wages.
Well, on that point, so is that player basically now gone? That kind of the player that, you know, a lot of us would have a soft spot for, the lad who limits his movements on and off the ball.
A luxury player.
Yeah, a luxury player, but, you know, the guy that's kind of going to be a cult hero, is he effectively gone from modern football, Gary? Is he, you know, I'm even thinking League of Ireland. I don't think players are getting away with that anymore, and there certainly were plenty of maybe slight League of Ireland players maybe carrying a bit of condition, and they dropped into these kind of...
do you know what, John? I don't think it has, because James Rodriguez is not going to be tearing around.
No sprints, not one sprint against West Brom.
Not one sprint. But when you work the ball as well as he does, you don't have to run around. So I think there is still a place for it. There's no doubt about it. But you have to structure the team to get the best out of him. Too many of them Arsenal players, for their failings, used to use Ozil as a crutch. That he's not running around, and it would hide all their inabilities and the reason why they shouldn't really be at Arsenal. Not good enough, a lot of those players, in terms of the standards you normally associate with Arsenal. But I don't think it's a redundant thing. I don't think it is. But you have to structure the team around him, knowing that his teammates will put the hard yards in, because he's able to open up teams in a way that hard-working players can't.
53106, if you can think of any luxury footballers down through the years, folks, that would just have to be in the team because they're so brilliant, but would be given kind of dispensation and allowances.
It's funny, JD, we'll say, if you just again on local level, so the Irish under-21s, Danny Mandrew is he's been over to England, he's been very, very talented player. You know, his goal against Shamrock Rovers last year, box office, all that, great stuff for the 21s. He's Bo's third choice number 10 this season, and a lot of it to me is his work off the ball isn't good enough, and he's basically going to leave a club where he was probably the most talented player. He's now become their third choice number 10, and the harder grafters it's mainly because of that, I think I've gotten ahead of him. And it's just interesting to see that Gary mentioned that number 10. The number 10 now has to work so hard. I think was it Jim Crawford, the under-21s boss, who said this to me on a podcast maybe last year. So he said he's number 10 in some respects, the most hard-working player on the pitch now. And that's a massive change in dynamic in the last 5-10 years.
Thomas Partey, the Ghanaian, has joined from Atletico Madrid. 50 million quid. Gary, he's joined Arsenal. Will he bring a bit of steel?
Yeah, listen, he'll be a bit of presence. There's no doubt about that. And Edu, the sporting director, the former central midfielder for Arsenal, made it known early on that this was part of the plan. They wanted to get him early. They knew about the kind of release clause, which was relatively low for a player of his standing, to be perfectly honest. And his wages at Atletico didn't mirror his standing in the team in a way that, oh God, who's the famous holding midfielder for Real Madrid, went to Chelsea, the little black guy, I forget his name. The famous
Makelele?
Oh. Makelele. He wasn't getting a good enough contract at Real Madrid for his standing. His wages were dwarfed by what he was at Real Madrid, so he comes to Chelsea and gets a much better deal. But I think he's in keeping with Arteta's philosophy, and I think that's important, that Arsenal have a bit of financial muscle to get players in that he wants who can improve that and give that manager a chance to build on what he has had done. But John, just on that last one about the number 10 role, what Johnny was saying there, Neil, the producer, said to me about Ireland lacking a star player to really elevate our team in a way that maybe Hamsik did for Slovakia. And I hadn't seen Hamsik play. It's so strange, really. I've done so much football over the years in terms of international and European games. Never really seen him, but I was so impressed with him. But it made me think about Ireland. I don't think we've ever had a player like that since Liam Brady.
Yeah.
We're talking about years ago. We're talking about Liam Brady.
Wes.
Obviously going to... Yeah, but you've got to understand...
For a player, though.
Yeah, you've got to talk about Hamsik's standing in terms of what he's done and align it to what Liam done for 7 years in Serie A, playing against the toughest defences in the world. Yeah.
He was such a joy to watch the other night. You're watching the opposition, but like talking about just the master puppeteer, and not necessarily like making these very quick runs, but just always having time. There was one thing I put up on Twitter, and it didn't get any traction at all, actually, but the ball just bounced outside the box, and he did this volley where he had to volley the ball upwards, but the ball was bouncing down, and he had to kind of cut across it and almost like spin under the ball. And like I just thought the technique was absolutely insane, and he kind of did it as if he was just getting out of the shower. It was like, oh, whatever. And it was just, we don't really have that player. Like, hopefully we will.
But we've never had it. We've
Brady.
never had it since Brady. And I mean, listen, I'm saying to you about Liam Brady playing in Serie A against the Italian defences, so packed, no space to make the passes. Yet in terms of the Italian defences, the coaching squad were nearly behind the ball in Italy in those years in Serie A. But I remember Liam Brady growing up as a kid. My God, John, do you remember that goal he scores against Tottenham where he cuts against the ball?
I remember watching
Anyone
it.
Look that goal up on YouTube or whatever now. He cuts across it and he just bends it. It's unbelievable goal. What a player.
It was a 5-0 defeat for Spurs by Arsenal. And I wonder that, though, is that down to street football? It's like, we're in Whitehall. That's back to like all these lads being sent over, like in the North Dublin, Stapleton, Brady. That was their bread and butter. What you do, you tell your mum you're going to play street football. I'll be back for my tea. And that's what you do. Gascoigne the same. Gascoigne, are there players with the tricks that Gascoigne, like in English football, that Gascoigne had? Like he was, and I'm getting some text in here on this. Raquel made the last of the lazy magicians from Cork.
What a player.
Jan Moby didn't run around, didn't need to. Ridiculous on the ball. Who doesn't know players like that? That is from Dave and Bray. And Ronaldo, Cristiano, the ultimate luxury player. I would disagree with that one. I think Ronaldo's an incredible player, all-round player. But maybe it's just a product of the times that we don't have these kind of players anymore.
Well, no, we've had those unbelievably gifted players in Damien Duff and Robbie Keane, but they're not playing in that 10 role, are they? Essentially, of Liam Brady as a playmaker, could get the ball off the defence and literally travel the length of the pitch and put it in the top corner. So, as much as we say we could do with one of them under Stephen Kenny, we haven't had one since Liam Brady. So, we need a little bit of a reality check there.
Did you find it blasphemous, Gary, last week that you had 9 goals in the Villa-Liverpool game, 7 in the Spurs United game as a former defender?
Oh, listen, I've had loads of 6s and 7 go past me as a defender. Don't worry about that. But in terms of the goals that they were conceding, they were like, as much as a coaching you want to do, it was a nonsense. Adrian trying to pass out from the back in goal. 3 of those goals for Villa were deflections as well. So a little bit of context there. But they were unrecognisable, Liverpool. They really were in terms of the high standards
Why
they
is
set.
this?
But
Why is this?
everyone felt that there was always going to be a game where a team got in because of that high defensive line and how easy they were to turn.
Why is this going on, though? Is it VAR? Are defenders now more apprehensive? Is it the lack of fitness maybe from some clubs because of the crazy situation we're in? Is it the handball rule? Is it pressing? Is it what? Can you put your finger on it?
Well, certainly that Manchester United game was because the defenders are not good enough. It's simple as that. You know, Harry Maguire's trying to play keepy up in his own box. Eric Bailly's passing out from the back when it's not really on. So this is the thing. But having said that, in terms of going back to, brilliant Manchester United defences, and certainly Van der Sar in goal with Rio and Vidic in front of him, Evra and Gary Neville, I think they went about 12, 13 games without conceding a goal. But they certainly weren't passing it out from the back in the way it is now. So football has changed, it's evolved. And I think it's a case of managers saying, listen, we'll take the risk for the reward. And certainly Liverpool do that. Not convinced Manchester United do.
Just on Wezo, my mate JP just messaged in there. He's obviously listening to the show. He's just assisted for 2 of the goals today for Cambridge. So you still get the thing. If Wezo, took a flight tonight, would he be able now with all the rules and everything? He just turned up at Lansdowne Road tomorrow. He still wouldn't look anyway out of place, even though he's playing for Cambridge. 2 assists today, beating Newport County 2-0.
Brilliant stuff there. Thanks.
I mean, I thought he was great, Wes. Anyway, he's a young player. You could tell when we play against the 21s, and certainly he was a talented player, no doubt about it. I got a big friend of mine who's a Norwich fan, and they absolutely idolise him.
Cult hero. Theo Walcott going back to Southampton. It's kind of he didn't have a bad career, and his career is still obviously going. But 108 goals for Arsenal, but in a World Cup squad at 17, 47 caps for England. Just kind of never has lived up to the hype. Theo Walcott.
No, he hasn't, unfortunately. But that was huge hype, though, wasn't it, John? That he was going to be a superstar. And even when he made that move, I'm always wary about players when they leave Arsenal and they think they're going to go to a kind of like a slightly lower ranked team at Everton, and as if they're then going to suddenly be the star player. It doesn't work like that. He's one of a number of Everton signings at a time where they paid millions and have made no impact whatsoever.
So tomorrow, folks, are you looking forward to it, Johnny? You up for it?
Yeah, it is. Like, I'm kind of a bit torn between what the lads were saying there. At one level, it's like, oh, God, it's coming down from Slovakia. But on the other level, the players who were on the pitch, I honestly think that a lot of those players wouldn't have enjoyed playing for Ireland as much as they did. And I know, Gary's been hugely has hugely defended Mick, but they just played with a bit more freedom on the ball, and they just believed in themselves a bit more, I thought, in terms of getting on the ball. And they really would have enjoyed playing, apart from losing the penalty shootout. So, as well as the lads mentioned, they're we even saw the changes in the second half. There are lots of places up for grabs here. I still think Seamus Coleman will not be thinking 100%. His place is gone going forward. Midfield is very much up for grabs. McLean didn't play badly, I thought, as much as he'll probably lose his place when Colin comes back. And I'm looking forward to it. I would be a little bit worried if they flopped tomorrow and had a bad reaction, but I don't think that will be the case. And I think hopefully the onward trajectory will continue.
Yeah.
Okay, Gary.
I'd agree.
Go on, Gary, briefly.
I'd agree with that. I think it's a good opportunity now for him. I've said about being angry with him in terms of not qualifying as such, but this is an opportunity for him. Having said that, I'm still angry about Ronald Koeman's shank strike in '88 to deny us the semi-final. I'm still angry about Donadoni's swerve shot that Paki spills for Schillaci. So basically, I'm an angry man.
Gary, there's a slot on OTB AM every week called I'm Angry, and we're going to get you on that and talk about those things in the future. Gary and Johnny, thanks for this afternoon.
About those subjects.
Thanks so much for today.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
thanks, guys.
Gary Breen and Johnny Ward there, and also Dan McDonnell earlier on. Thanks so much for listening this afternoon. Don't forget, Off the Ball Sunday tomorrow with Joe Malloy from 1. We'll bring you live commentary of the Republic of Ireland's Nations League game against Wales in the company of Nathan Murphy and Stewie Byrne from Lansdowne Road. That kicks off at 2. Don't miss that. Also, Cliona Foley and Colm Keys will join us for the Sunday paper review, and we'll bring you more from our Super Value remote GAA Roadshow. Now, if you missed the Saturday panel with John Giles, Rosemary Smith and Eddie Kerr, who shared some of their life experiences and spoke about how older people are faring during the pandemic, or our football chat with Gary Breen, Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward, you can find the podcasts of them on our brand new OTB Sports app. Search OTB Sports in your app store now to download the app for iOS and Android, or check out the content wherever you get your pods. Thanks so much for listening today. Speak soon. Bye-bye.